Our total forest is the size of England, is the size of the United Kingdom. So that by itself gives one scale of what we're talking about when we speak of Guyana's forest. Um, in terms of the national context, 85% of Guyana's landmass is forested. So it is not like other countries where just 30, 40, 20% is forested. So it is probably the most important asset that we have for our longer term future and our longer term development. And these forests, although they provide important services for local communities, the benefits that it can potentially provide for the international community is quite great, because these benefits can transform from not just ecosystem services, but as provider of biodiversity and other functions that they help support in terms of protected areas, and also in terms of other aspects of programs that are being carried out.
Guyana is one of just a couple of countries that has set up a national system of payment for results.
Guyana, Norway, and Brazil represent the only two national cooperations in the world that have set up a national system of payment for results, and payment for results based on ecosystem services.
The partnership between Guyana and Norway on sustainable development of the country's forest resources and climate change continues to grow. A high-level team from Guyana recently visited Norway to reaffirm this relationship and exchange views on the global climate agenda and progress towards the Conference of Parties of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change to be held in Paris in December.
Honorable Minister Robert Prasad and a team of staff from GFC and the Project Management Office of the Office of Climate Change visited Norway. And among the main objectives of the trip were to discuss with the technical officers from the Norwegian side the progress to date on various programmatic areas of work that Guyana has been engaged in as part of the cooperation agreement with the government of Norway, as well as other programs that we have had ongoing that support those initiatives. The intent of the trip really were, in addition to giving an update to the Norwegians, also were to reaffirm our commitment to having Forest and REDD Plus continue to play a very important part in the global climate change debate.
Discussions also focused on the upcoming Conference of Parties of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change.
There is going to be a very important meeting happening at the end of this year under the auspices of the UN, and one of the objectives of the trip was to share ideas on how we can cooperate and bring greater levels of recognition of forests at the level of the UN at that meeting.
Presentations made by the Guyanese delegation were well received and served to better inform on initiatives being pursued by Guyana.
The minister was the lead of our delegation, and one of the main presentations he delivered encompassed a progress update on the various areas of work that Guyana has been undertaking for the past 2 to 3 years, and also looking at ways in which the various natural resources subsectors have been contributing to the realization of these programs. The main presentation delivered by the minister was to the Development Agency of Norway, which is called NORAD, and at that meeting we were also fortunate to have representatives from civil society, including Rainforest Foundation Norway, as well as other civil society subunits within the Norwegian government. And importantly, we were fortunate as well to have representatives of NICFI, which is the Norwegian International Climate and Forest Initiative.
The minister's presentation focused on 3 main areas. The first spoke about the overarching platform of Guyana's cooperation with Norway, which is the low-carbon development strategy, and the actions the minister would have taken over the last 3 years, and how the projects are linked to the LCDS. The second aspect focused on the Key Forest Governance Initiative, which is the European Union Forest Law Enforcement Governance and Trade Programme, and the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative. The third aspect of the presentation focused on how Guyana views its role in the international and global debates on climate change.
One of the points Minister Persaud made in that third aspect of his presentation dealt with how we can further advance the platform to not only ensure that REDD+ and climate change and tropical forests remain important, prominent parts of the debates coming up to Paris, but what countries like Guyana and Norway together can do, having now had quite a mature relationship and cooperation in trying to move that forward even faster than otherwise would have been possible. And some of the agreements included not only having increased focus on REDD+ as part of the platform for high forest cover, low deforestation with countries like Guyana, but having more discussions at the level of financing for countries like Guyana in advancing REDD+.
The Guyana Forestry Commission has very effective export procedures in place. All forest produce to be exported must be verified by a GFC grading inspector, and the required documentation must be properly completed and verified prior to export.
Littering is unhealthy and unsafe to both humans and animals. It is not our government or city council that has the only responsibility to keep our city clean. We also, as citizens, have a responsibility not to litter.
The only way the garbage can get out on the streets is if we, the people in our country, throw the garbage out there. No bottle, don't walk out and get on the street.
Stop littering. Do the right thing.
Minister Persaud also held high-level discussions with the director and staff of the Norwegian Agency for Development, NORAD.
At this meeting, the minister was able to discuss Guyana's main move forward in terms of development from the various natural resources aspect. Aspects regarding mining was discussed, forestry, protected areas, and the minister was able to provide to the Director General what Guyana has been doing in advancing planning for the various subsectors. He spoke at length about the mining sector as well as the forest sector, and he also discussed the tremendous progress which would have been made to date in the setting up of the Protected Areas Trust Fund and in the operationalizing of the management of the various protected areas, having had the protected areas legislation being passed a few years ago. One of the main high points of the minister's meeting with the Director General of NORAD was the commitment that Guyana will continue to focus on the implementation of the LCDS, and it was good to have that reaffirmed at that meeting. As the Director General is quite interested in the development aspect of our work, the LCDS indeed provides that platform for development.
There were also several technical discussions at which Minister Persaud presented updates on Guyana's low-carbon development strategy and REDD+ programs.
We also met with the Norwegian International Climate and Forest Initiative, abbreviated NICFI. NICFI is our main technical counterpart for the work we've been doing on the various aspects of REDD+. One of the key areas we discussed was the monitoring, reporting and verification system and the plans to complete the 5th annual assessment of the MRV. As some may know, the GFC would have completed 4 annual assessments starting in 2010, and that led to the 4th assessment of 2013, and we are currently working on the final assessment, which will finish the first phase of the 5-year assessments that we have planned.
Since 2009, Guyana recognized that no solution can be arrived at for climate change without addressing forests, which play an integral role in not only mitigating climate change, but is responsible for the livelihood of the people who depend on it. Protecting both the forests and the right of the people to use it in a sustainable manner have been high on the country's agenda under the LCDS.
The LCDS is based on this platform, and from the very initial days of our work under the Low Carbon Development Strategy, the common theme of our platform in trying to bring attention to the importance of forests to climate change and in recognizing this has been from the perspective that countries like Guyana that have historically had very low deforestation rates and that have maintained their forests for decades, even centuries, need to be rewarded for such good practices. And historically, and through the course of the debates and the discussions at the level of the UNFCCC up until 2009, this was not quite recognized. Countries that had high deforestation rates and were reversing this were instead given incentives for doing so. So whilst that is quite plausible and it's a good move forward, we also believe that those countries that would have had historically low deforestation rates and have taken and have made quite concerted efforts to keeping that low and to maintaining those forests, that these countries should also be rewarded, which in essence speaks to the very core of what REDD+ is.
Are you aware that littering is an unhealthy practice? Change begins with one. Let us all work together for the change we all wish to see. A clean, healthy Guyana.
Pick it up, do not litter, and encourage others to do the same.
Come on, Guyana, pick it up. Littering is not good.
Stop littering. Do the right thing.
Government assisting miners. Miners in Guyana have access to 10% of their gold sales available in US dollars to assist in retooling and capital acquisition. A message from the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission.
As we observe International Forest Day, when we talk about forests, when we look at Guyana, mass, 85% of Guyana mass is laid with forests. And indigenous people, we, the indigenous people, have been the chief custodians from our ancestors centuries ago. So we have cared the forest from then until now. And you can see how important the forest is to us, all indigenous people throughout the 10 administrative region of Guyana. Looking back over the years, the forest means so much to us. When we look at the forest, is our livelihood, is our future. And as we observe International Forest Day, it is very important to us and to maintain that standard where we can retain our forest until of today. I like to say also that over the years we have heard about the LCDS program. And I'm proud to say that the indigenous people of Guyana have been benefiting through this program through the Norway Fund. First of all, I'd like to thank the government in the first 26 communities that has benefited from the pilot project through the LCDS program, through the Norway Fund. And that proved successfully. Added to that, 160 communities have been added, the rest of the Armenian communities have been added to this program, and it's right now ongoing. So we can see how important the forest is to us, and we must be able to thank the government for initiating that policy where the LCDS program is so much important to us.
In the beginning, we depended on the forest for everything, for the seeds and fruits, for the maternity space, for the shelters, and the big trees where to climb to be safe from predators. And should be indeed in a tropical forest, for this special human story to begin as a trip that we never asked to. But we have to keep on going with the best intelligence as possible. And the forests were always present, providing food, energy, materials, and models for so many useful things. We must keep this beautiful relation between man and forest. Just a few examples of links. An important step in this history was the dominion of fire, how to survive and be free from many things without it. It could only be in a forest after a thunder and lightning, and we were there to catch the fire. First to dominate in small pieces, and then to set our own fire by moving quickly sticks. That was the very beginning of our history. Then came the time to transform materials into things as the potteries for more efficient use of our time, and also the weapons for the expansion of our space. But behind the scene was again the forest providing the energy for the transformation.
Our forests in Guyana have had a very special relationship with all our peoples, particularly our indigenous people. And that is why, for generations, we can boast about the good quality, sound management of our forestry sector, even in very challenging times, both internationally as well as nationally, and the demand for the resources within, and even the demand for our forest areas, and how we've been able to, as it were, be able to withstand those type of inducements, those type of threats to our forest area, and ensuring that we continue to utilize and manage it in a way not only present, but many future generations will be proud of. And on that note, I want to use this day to recognize the people who have worked and continue to work in the sector. One, our operators; two, our indigenous communities; and a third category, very importantly, the people who work in the Guyana Forestry Commission, the leadership as well as the staff of the Forestry Commission, because it is through their efforts and through their work that today in Guyana, when we go on the international scene, we are recognized as one of the good models, one of the excellent models of forest stewardship, of sound management of these resources. And as we move forward in developing our country, in taking care of the needs of our people, and I must say in Guyana's context, our forest has not only been about its environmental value, but also it has made a positive impact on the socio-economic livelihood of many, many communities, indigenous communities across our country. And more so in recent times, when we've had problems with traditional sectors of our economy, forestry-related activities have to step up and fill that gap. And we can look at the situation in Region 10 as a good example, where we have more than half of all community forestry organizations reside, and that's when there was that significant downturn in the bauxite industry. This government took a decision, a policy decision, that would emphasize and make special allowances and special efforts to ensure that the people in Region 10 who would have been affected by the downturn in the bauxite industry, that they would have had access to the forest resources so that their economic and social livelihood can be maintained and even enhanced. And that's just an example, and I can cite many examples whereby the impact of forestry has one being in terms of sustainability, and in some regards transformational, in creating opportunity, one in maintaining opportunities, but also creating new opportunities for all our people. And again, it emphasizes how important our forest resources. Today, we're one of 2 countries only in the world where we're able, as it were, to earn from the eco-services, the ecological services of our rainforest. So not only will we utilize it for its timber resources, but also we also look in terms of today we're earning through a partnership we have, for example, with the Kingdom of Norway, where we're earning resources for the development of our country.
The government of Guyana joins with all Guyanese, as well as with our regional and international colleagues, in publicly acknowledging the countless benefits and of properly managed forests to human and other life forms on a perennial basis. During the past decade, there has been a great deal of international recognition on the environmental and climate change mitigation contribution of sustainably managed forests. Additionally, at the last FAO Committee on Forestry, chaired by former President Barajaglio, there was a unanimous call for countries to individually and collectively place much more emphasis on identifying and properly quantifying the real socio-economic benefits of forests. A similar call was made for developing appropriate methodologies to gather accurate data on the important role of women and indigenous peoples in forest utilization and giving greater recognition. However, ladies and gentlemen, our government can honestly and proudly declare that the COFO areas of priority are nothing new to Guyana. These are the very things that Guyana has been doing for many decades and in very credible and in a very credible and transparent manner. The future of forests is therefore very bright, and we will continue to work with our local forest industry and other stakeholders, along with international partners, such as the government of Norway, to advance common goals regarding forests, climate change, and socio-economic development. As we celebrate International Day of the Forest 2015, this government commits to facilitating all of this whilst maintaining our strong environmental stewardship and further strengthening our socio-economic development for all the people of our country.
Government assisting miners. A list of 19 suppliers of mining equipment and spares was approved for tax waivers on the importation of this equipment. This will reduce the cost of spares and critical supplies for miners and is an addition to items that are already being imported duty-free, such as pumps, flexes, and matting. A message from the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission.
Litter not only defaces the natural environment, it is also unhealthy and irresponsible. Don't you want to enjoy the beauty and enormous services our environment offers? Then why not be the change you want to see? Let us work together to eliminate the repulsive habit of littering.
Stop littering. Do the right thing.
Check us out on the internet for this and every episode of Dorado Shines. Just go to YouTube, search for Dorado Shines, and start watching. Or like us on Facebook and receive instant updates. You've been watching Dorado Shines. Do join us again next week for another program. Until then, do remember that we all have a role to play in protecting the environment.